Going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions podcast. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're gonna go over some of the draft hates from this last draft. Just some of the moves that we just didn't think teams hit on, things that we thought they could have done better, or maybe there was a player there that they should have gone for it. Otherwise, just kind of those types of things. So
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to do a draft grades like A plus, A minus, because one, that's just guessing after the first few picks, and it's kind of baseless and just kind of clickbaity. So we just want to break down things we liked, things we didn't like, and so these are a few guys that we just thought either were reaches, weren't great fits, or all that. So we'll just kind of get right into it.
yeah, so starting off, we've got an interesting position. I mean, we don't always talk about this position, but we're gonna go punter.
Yep.
The first punter off the board going to the Chicago Bears, Tory Taylor. He is a guy at Iowa. Thing that stands off, like jumps off the board just looking at that, is the fact that he is 27 years old. He will be 27 years old when the season starts. And you just don't see that as a rookie coming out. Of course, he's playing punter. It's more okay, but it's just like, whoa, that's just a little intense. So
yeah, and the main thing about this isn't like we're not, oh, you can't take a punter in the fourth round. This isn't this punter sucks. I mean, he was a Ray Guy Award winner. He was the top punter in the draft. It's the age, 27, like you said, and it's the fact that Chicago had 4 picks total. You use your first 2 on your offense. And if your offense is going to be humming like it is, what position is probably least important? Your punter. So you're saying you had 2 picks left in the draft after your 2 top 10 picks, and one is going to be a punter when you have so many needs. And it's not like they're a bad team. They're going to be a playoff team, like we said, regardless.
right.
But offensive line, defensive line, edge, corner, safety, really anything but running back is probably something that would have helped.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, it didn't make a lot of sense to us.
Addressing defense was definitely where, we thought they would go.
Mhm.
After going offense twice and then going, they had to have fun. They got to find some defensive players. I mean, they didn't have these insane amount of sacks. They have a really good corner, but on the other side, we're still questioning if that's the guy. They have a good tandem of linebackers, so we're not worried there, but that have underperformed at least. But, there's still positions that can be improved. D-line, rotational guys. 4th round rotational defensive linemen are normally a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't target those things. Instead, they went and got a 27-year-old punter. Yeah. He was obviously, like you said, one of the best in the country. Iowa was, I think Iowa held people under 10 points a game, and he was a big part of that. 35 punts inside the 20. That tells you a lot. But it's just a weird pick.
And he's a big dude that probably might go viral a time or two for a hit on a punt return or a kickoff. Right. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams literally, after he was selected, was like, hey, bro, welcome to the team. You're not going to be punting much. And it's like, if it works out, that's probably true. And that's probably why it's not a great pick.
Yeah. And that's what you want. You don't want to punt. So I don't know. It is what it is.
Yeah. So next off, we're going to go with Braden Fiske. He's a guy that was a combine standout, kind of middle of the pack in terms of the defensive interior line. Really liked his upside when he was not a fringe first round pick.
Yeah.
But this is more so about the amount that the Rams moved up to get him. And we don't have the numbers in front of me, but in terms of the draft capital value that they traded, this was the most that somebody traded away for a second round pick in over 6 years.
Yeah.
So this, on top of us thinking that this might be a slight reach, it reunites him with Jared Verse. That's always a good thing when you have teammates working together again. But giving up another second round pick next year just to move up to get somebody that may have fallen to you to begin with, it was a little puzzling.
So they gave up to move from 52 to 39. They gave up this year's second, and then next year's second, and then also 155. That's a lot. That's a whole lot, especially when we had, at this point, other defensive linemen that probably were above him on our board. He just, the 3 defensive linemen went in a row. You had Ruke Orhorhoro, you had Jerzon Newton, and then you had Braden Fiske. We saw that a couple times. There was a couple trends of just a bunch of players getting picked at the same position. I just don't know if moving 13 spots to get a guy who has a capped upside is 24.5 when the season starts. I don't know that makes sense. I love his motor. I love all the things he does, but it's more of, at 52, you would have been like, okay, this is a good spot for him. He's probably a fringe second, third rounder, not a fringe first, second rounder. So,
and maybe they had intel that he wouldn't be there. Who knows? But you shouldn't have traded up that much, or traded away that much, rather, to just move up 13 spots. It might be even value if you went from 23 to 10 to get. That might be a bad example, but maybe 28 to 15 is probably an example of worthy of that draft capital. And 25 picks later to do that same kind of package is something that we didn't understand.
Yeah. So jumping to another interior defensive lineman that we just did not understand. You have Ruke Orhorhoro out of Clemson. We, good athlete, solid, probably a third rounder to us. But biggest thing about this pick to me is he went before Johnny Newton.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Like, I don't care how, the difference in ability. We didn't even have Ruke in our top, on our rankings, even in our honorable mentions. And he goes over our number one overall D lineman. Mm-hmm. So I just was a little baffled by this.
Yeah, pick for sure. And ESPN wise, we talked about how big boards kind of work. A lot of them had Ruke as an earlier second round pick, which we didn't understand to begin with. I remember texting you that a few weeks ago, and it's just like, why? Again, if it's Johnny Newton, then him, then Fiske, maybe he's on this list, maybe he's not. But it's mainly just about you went over our number one, and nobody over the last 2 seasons outproduced Johnny Newton.
No.
And he's coming from Illinois with all these big defensive linemen that have been coming out and having success and outperforming them at Illinois.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense.
It's also the fact that, we can talk about, the actual stats. 8.7% pass rush win rate is not good enough. And that's the other problem I had with Braden Fiske. He had a similar pass rush win rate. While Johnny Newton is, Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy, these guys are 10, 12, 15. I think, even Javondre Sweat, who we had go a little bit later, I believe, to the Titans, he's got a 12% win rate. So it didn't make sense when you're in a league where you're trying to rush the passer and you get a guy that hasn't been exceptional at that in any way. I mean, 66.9 PFF grade for rushing the passer. It's just not good enough to me. And it's way too early for this guy.
It's not like, oh, this guy's young. He's a good project. Interesting. No, he's 23. He's older than Johnny. I mean, he didn't have the production. He doesn't have the upside. Just none of it. It just baffles me. It's almost to the point where we'll talk in a moment about Michael Penix, but I actually dislike this pick more.
Yeah, for Atlanta.
Just because at least Penix, you can understand, okay, in your mindset, optimistically, you're not going to have another top 10 pick. Kirk Cousins, Achilles injury, he's 36. Maybe he doesn't pan out and we're screwed that way, so we're going to get a guy that can contribute right away.
Right.
Sure.
No.
It just doesn't make sense, man. So
jumping over to our next guy, we've had our reservations on this guy, like basically all offseason. We knew he was going to go overdrafted. We knew he was most likely going to be on this list because for some reason the NFL sees him as more of a bright spot than we do. But I just don't get it because he's going to be 23.7 years old when the season starts. He had a 2.42 yards after contact. He's not explosive. He didn't have explosive plays, and explosive plays are anything over 15 plus yards. He had the same amount as almost everybody in our top 10 list and had twice as many rushes. And it's like, okay, I just, there's nothing that makes me, he's got tons of carries on his body. He's not going to be a guy that you can give the ball to 20 times a game and expect him to stay healthy. He's little. I don't know.
And on top of that, all of that, is very valid. We're much lower on him than consensus. Don't believe in him as an NFL prospect. However, this is also about, most people do running back tandems at this point. There's not bell cow backs.
Right.
The Rams are one of the only teams that have a bell cow back, and he was good with his role.
Yes.
And on top of that, Corum's not even a great complement to that.
No, they're the same player.
Like, they're the same kind of player, but Kyren is bigger, he's stronger, he's faster, and better receiver, all of that. And so when Kyren has a 20-yard run and he has to come out for a couple plays, and then it's 3rd down and 8, and you need a scat back that's gonna, block and then make some plays.
It's not this.
It's not Blake.
No.
That's not him. And so again, as much as we dislike Blake, if he goes to Tennessee when there's 2 scat backs, or he compliments Rachaad White, or something of that nature, that style of 1-2 punch probably isn't on the list. But it's just because of, like, you went to be a true backup as a 3rd-round pick, and you are a much worse version of that guy, and you don't compliment him well. It's like, I don't see him being productive at all. I just don't see a path for that unless Kyren, you always knock on wood, but if he's healthy, like, where's his role that he's just going to benefit your team, especially early on? Because like you said, over 23.5 when the season starts. So that's running back prime. So you need to be utilizing, like, Tyler Algier annoys us Bijan fans because he's just a really good running back that was drafted in the 5th round, but just a big guy that can punch one in, get the dirty yards.
Right.
And he's a compliment to Bijan, who's a scat back around the ends.
Yeah, he can do everything. He's an all-around back, but he plays that role really well for that offense.
A David Montgomery to a Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
Like, same thing. Jahmyr, if obviously he would probably be on a hate pick list last year, but we understand the fit. Having next to, like, a Thunder and Lightning,
Well, the other thing is with me, with this pick, is there were so many, like, scat style backs available. You talk about a guy like Marshawn Lloyd. He's there. Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving, all these guys that are, we don't have Jalen Wright ranked above Blake Corum, but he would have been a much better fit for this offense. Marshawn Lloyd would have been a much better fit. Trey Benson would have been I think Trey Benson was gone at this point, but Trey Benson even would have, all those guys would have made a lot more sense going to the Rams.
Right.
Than Blake.
And then us as, like, fantasy players looking into best ball, usually you want to be targeting what's called a handcuff. So handcuff is basically somebody that will have 0 value to you, but if the starting running back goes down, he just steps right into 20 touches, i.e. Jahmyr White.
Right.
No role at all when Josh Jacobs was healthy. When he got hurt, gave him 20 touches a game, and he probably did well for you in your best ball playoffs.
Right.
That is the only upside that he has. When you look at rookie running backs, you're like, okay, who's the guy that is just going to outperform his role? And he's just a guy that's probably a waiver pick.
Yeah.
And you might spend some fab on if Kyren went down to IR and he missed a month. That's really the only upside he has as a rookie. And, we didn't like the pick whatsoever.
No. And so jumping over, we're going to go back to the first round. There weren't that many picks we hated in the first round, truly. But Amarius Mims is such a weird pick for the Bengals. They bring in the Brown brothers, basically. You got Orlando Brown on the left, and you got Trent Brown on the right. Where does Amarius Mims fit in with the rest of the 6'8", 340-pounders?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem with this whole pick, is because, like, who moves inside? Nobody. Who starts? Well, probably the vets. So Amarius Mims is just a waiting piece of this offense, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he could find his way to just outperform it, and it would probably be at this point Trent Brown, not Orlando Brown. Orlando was paid the big bucks. He's at left tackle. Amarius Mims against Trent Brown, who's just been back and forth with New England and the Raiders, and he just very inconsistent play, and he's now over 30. Yeah. So he's more likely to be the one that's jumped, but it's just like he walks in and is starting 500 snaps. It's like he's got to earn it, and if he does, good. And we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. But it's the role is not solidified in a grand scheme of things, like you said.
Yeah, and it's not like he's a quarterback. Like quarterbacks, sometimes they sit, they wait, they need that. There's other tackles in this class that might have been more fit for that, but Amarius Mims, I thought, could have started tomorrow.
And your division rival 2 picks later going with Troy Fatanu. It makes a lot of sense because he has the flexibility to go inside if you want to go that route, or if you wanted to pick him outright, then. But the biggest thing is you want to have your best 5 offensive linemen be playing at the same time, and it feels like that's not going to be the case in Cincinnati. So that's why we kind of thought that there would be better fits, at least in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. So next on the list we have DJ or Delmar Glaze, tackle out of Maryland, and he got picked by the Raiders in the 3rd round. There were some at 77. He's probably a 150 to 200 player. So we went back to reaching. At least we didn't do it early. Mm-hmm. But I have a really hard time with this pick because first off, we have Colton Miller. He's not going anywhere. And then at right tackle, we needed an upgrade, but this isn't an upgrade. It's basically we got a backup to our poor right tackle. Mm-hmm. So I have a really hard time with this pick, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to put it lightly, this is a type of move that the Raiders have often done in early rounds. Yeah. In the first 2 rounds, obviously going with Brock Bowers, Jackson Powers-Johnson in the 2nd round. Not needs, but basically best player available, and we really like the value that they got there. But Delmar, like you said, is just somebody that was probably picked a round and a half to 2 rounds too early.
Right.
And, there were other tackles available, and it just didn't feel like it's something that's going to be helping them immediately like the first 2 will.
Yeah, there's probably 5, 6, maybe 7, probably 6 guys that I'd rather have that were still on the board, just looking at it. And also, we passed on a guy that, we could have used in Peyton Wilson. There were other corners. We hadn't picked a corner at this point. TJ Tampa's still on the board. So it's like we reached on a guy and left value in other positions when we didn't have to. And so that's my biggest thing with that whole pick too. So we didn't have to make this decision and get a guy that isn't going to help us that much, I guess, in the long run. I don't feel like.
Right. So yeah, moving on, our next one, Ricky Pearsall going to the 49ers. Very draft day, suddenly Brandon Ayuk getting phone calls. He could be traded to the Patriots. And then Debo could be traded to the Patriots or wherever. They were actively shopping both of them. Didn't expect them to move on from both, but at least one,
right?
Based on the news that we were receiving, and then also having to pay both soon. And this is the last true year, like we've said when we covered the NFC West and their outlook of them truly not having cap woes. Mm-hmm. It's really going to bite them once Brock Purdy's not on his 10 cents for the dollar contract that he's on, and then they got to figure out if he's truly their future. But Ricky Pearsall, 1st round, that was not anywhere close to where we thought he would go. There was about 6, 7 other guys that did not go in the first that we thought would be not just better fits, but just more likely to go this early. And, it just didn't make a lot of sense. And then on top of that, the age, and then in addition to that, you didn't move on from either Ayuk or Samuel. So
right,
now
it's still there.
So now it's like, what are you going to do now? I mean,
just have all the athletes on the field all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't like he was like a super productive player. That's something that I think it's kind of like skewed, is like when we talk about Ricky Pearsall, a lot of people like they kind of bring up the fact that, oh, well, he was, Florida's best receiver and all this stuff. Well, Florida wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. And, he was only an honorable mention all SEC player going in the 1st round of the NFL draft. Guys that went behind him, Xavier Legette, same, first team all SEC, and I know the accolades don't necessarily matter, but it's like they're being directly compared to each other. Mm-hmm. They're being compared on a weekly basis. Coaches watch film, coaches vote. and he's going over these guys.
Mm-hmm.
He could be a really good player, but I just don't think that he's ever going to hit
The
pick
first round
31 ability.
Yeah,
you know?
and then on top of that, he's older than all of them. So he's basically 24 when he starts, and I think he has some very nice highlights. He's got the sexiest screenshot that we have of any person on these slides.
One-handed is awesome.
But at the end of the day, you can't always fall in love with just the one play. Like Odell Beckham Jr. is unfortunately his legacy is getting tarnished because he is known for a play that happened 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the last 5 years is not a 1,000-yard receiver, yet he's still getting paid wide receiver 2 money by multiple teams. And people are just hoping that they can get back to 2013. And it's like, it's hard enough to get back to 2021 of a guy's production. Like, look how fast Julio Jones was out of the league after being the best receiver. And then was probably still in the top 5 when he left Atlanta going to Tennessee. And then 2 years later is just mid-season inactives with Philly.
Yeah.
Occasionally catching a touchdown. But it's just like, that's not what you're remembered for.
Yeah.
And so when you're chasing things, it usually doesn't work out.
Well, talking about that, there was a guy who went 2 picks later in Keon Coleman, and he's one of the best jump ball, just like ball in the air, one-handed catcher guys. He might have gone too early in our eyes a little bit, but at the same time, we thought he was better than Ricky Pearsall. If they would have taken him, it would have made more sense to me, and I could have seen Keon Coleman based on his style of play being different than everybody else, putting him in the first round. Ricky Pearsall, I didn't think was a first rounder. Even right now, I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
So, but
yeah. And again, we've touched on how receiver also has one of the worst hit rates, and they also still have yet to solve their right tackle issue at the time. And it's just like, that's not a need, and it also was not best player available, and you did both. So, and then we'll jump back into the top 10. Obviously, the draft shock of the night of night 1 was Michael Penix Jr. going to Atlanta. He wasn't even a prop to be bet to go to Atlanta. That's how shocking it was to everybody. We get the premise behind the move, but it's just after what you invested in Kirk Cousins, over $100 million over the next 2 years guaranteed. Top 10 pick, nothing really added up from a grand scheme of things. And maybe that's probably more so just because of what you invested in Kirk just a month prior.
Yeah, I just feel like they could have gotten a backup. They could have found a backup, not a guy that was ready to start and play. Like, if Michael Penix sits for 2 years, he's 26, starting his career. And I get that quarterbacks play much later now, but that's still old. Like, we still can't take off the fact that is old. A guy like Bo Nix, he'll probably start this year. A guy, both Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams will start this year, and they're much younger. They're going to have 4 years of playing time before Michael Penix hits the field if Kirk Cousins doesn't work out.
It's almost like, if Penix works out, yay, cool. Well, you still got $100 million to pay out, and it's not like you can take advantage of his rookie salary until his third or fourth year, which is a frustrating thing as an Atlanta fan. But yeah, it just didn't make, from a business perspective, a ton of sense. I get the premise of making sure you have something because they've been cycling through quarterbacks since Matt Ryan departed, but investing this early, not trading back, not getting anything extra, and then you're still either way, they're probably going to be our pick to win the division, whoever starts. Even if Kirk, for some reason, is not available for multiple games or he gets hurt early again, Michael Penix with Atlanta, we're probably going to pick them maybe a game worse in projected win total for us, but it's still a 9-10 win team to us, and we think that they have just as high of a floor as any other team in that division.
Well, yeah, I think that they are probably the shoe-in to win that division in my eyes. I mean, right now, I don't know who you would even... I mean, Tampa Bay. I don't think it's not the Saints. They're, they've got too many issues, I feel like. And then Carolina. So basically they're a top 2 team in the division, no matter what. And then you have the fact that Tampa Bay was a 9-win team last year and made it. But so that's
and
my
you made
pick.
our list twice.
Yeah, and then both 2 picks. First of your 2 picks. Terrible. So
that wraps up our hate list of picks we liked, or I'm sorry, disliked for various reasons. Went through them all. We appreciate you guys listening. Please like, comment, subscribe. We'll be having other draft reaction content that we'll be coming out with throughout the rest of the week. Stay tuned for that, and then fantasy and all that good stuff that we're going to be getting into pretty soon.
Yep, that's the plan. Now that the draft's over, we're going to recap, and then we're going to start looking at all the things fantasy, auction, best ball, regular fantasy, everything. We'll get you lists and all kinds of stuff. So just get ready. It's coming.
Hopefully we can stay organized because we're starting to overlap a ton on ideas and stuff. And so just making sure we complete everything, get everything out to y'all quickly and just consistently. That's what we're mainly going to be trying to do throughout the off season, because even though season is months away and this is the true downtime of the sport, this is where it kind of picks up for us. So we're excited for it.
And we don't want to put too much on Ricky. Ricky does a great job. Yep. So we want to make sure that he can sleep a little bit also.
Right.
But yeah, we appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next time.
Yep.